The Dungeons & Dragons movie has been rescheduled to the end of March instead of its initial release at the beginning. Many role players are assuming this can only mean they're trying to keep the movie as authentic as possible to the source material, meaning that any group finds it nearly impossible to actually schedule a correct date where everyone can meet up. For some actual news in both RPGs, board, and card games, stay tuned to find out what's been happening for the week of November 9th, 2022. The workers of Noble Knight Games have announced they are forming a union in association with the communication workers of North America. Noble Knight Games is a large store in Wisconsin that has a large variety of games, but seems to specialize more out of print and maybe harder to find games. The union is being formed for, well, the same reason that most unions tend to be formed, with some anonymous sources right now mentioning low pay, as well as not really any paid time off or sick leave. Now, of course, we'll learn more details when the union is actually formed and the negotiation begins. Right now, they are asking the company to recognize them on their own. If that is the case, then the union is automatically formed and they enter negotiations. If they don't, that's when you get that voting period we've been hearing a bit more about with like Starbucks and Amazon. Though the two I do want to focus a bit more is actually the Raven Studios and Paizo, because apparently the communication workers, the ones I mentioned earlier, they're being affiliated with here, also played a part in those as well. It seems that is the major union you go to if you're in the geek culture space. So it's very interesting to see them pop up again. It didn't occur to me, or at least I don't remember talking about it last time when we mentioned the Paizo story a little while back. The Raven Studios, by the way, was working with Activision Blizzard. I believe they were game testers. We'll have to see what happens here because this is a little different. Noble Knights is a retail store, not a company making games, at least to my knowledge. They just happen to have a very large warehouse with a bit more of a focus on the out-of-date kind of style games in Wisconsin. And that's the other thing. I don't know if there are some slight different state laws that could switch things up. We'll have to see what happens. Like I said, right now, we don't know yet if the union has been recognized, therefore approved, or they'll have to go through the voting process. I'm sure I'll talk about it again when we have more of an update on the situation. Atomic Mass Games, which has taken over all the Star Wars miniatures from Fantasy Flight Games, recently sent out a tweet saying that their new Legion Battle Force starter sets may be missing a few pieces. Some people might not know. If you bought one of these, double check, especially look at that tweet, because they mentioned how certain sets were missing some cards and tokens. Some people even mentioned some standees were missing from these sets. Obviously, you'll probably want these considering a war game. You want to know what information is going on. This is one, important if you've already bought it. Two, right now, they said they will be printing a fix. They do have print and play fixes out right now that you can get for, I assume, the things that you can print and play. Don't know if you can really print out a standee. But this is also important because they have another new Star Wars miniature game coming out. Star Wars Shatterpoint is a new miniatures war game. From the cover, it seems to be based a bit more on the animated series. I wonder whether this will play more like Legion or more like the Marvel Crisis. I will say, just from the cover, it looks more like, because it has that cartoony feeling more, maybe it's a bit lighter than Legion and Rules. This is coming from someone who knows nothing of Legion in terms of the actual gameplay. So we'll have to see what that happens. But regardless, if you do plan to buy that, or you've already bought some Star Wars Legion, even if it's not one of the star kits, just double check to make sure you have everything you're supposed to have so you can actually be playing the game how it's supposed to be played. And if not, double check to see if there's something you can print out, or if there is a way for you to get a replacement part sometime in the future. Now on to TCG news, and because there's quite a bit in the world of card games. First, YuGiOh. They have announced that they're doing a new special charity event. The way it's going to work is you can go to your local card store to take part in this event. The thing is, the entrance fee for the tournament are tins of food, at least according to what I read. I don't know whether that means like cans of food or YuGiOh tins, but with food inside of them. Either way, it seems a lot of the prizes as well as winning can earn you more tins of food. And the idea is you're going to try to play and win and get more cards, but instead of paying money, you're giving food, which will help with food donations. It's interesting to say the least. I don't know if they've done this before. I'm really curious to see how it does work out, but it's a charity event. So good, go do it, please. Play there, help out. The next thing I want to talk about is the return of a card game, Battle Spirits, and now is Battle Spirits Saga. This card game comes from Bandai, same people who do the Dragon Ball, Digimon, as well as the One Piece one, which had its bit of its pre-release and is slated to technically release in December. I'll go a little bit more into that later. This new card game, as far as I know, is not based on an existing IP like the ones I mentioned before. It is based on a previous Battle Spirits card game, which I think was popular in Japan and even had some crossover sets. But this is a complete reboot. But the interesting thing is, if you go to the website and look at the region coding pages, Asia is not mentioned there, just North America, Europe, Latin America, and Oceania. So I'm really curious whether they think it just won't survive in that market. What does that mean? And in particular, how will this do against the card games they already have? That being said, both Digimon's doing well. One Piece has been selling out really fast. And if you are planning to join it, please don't follow the scalpers. This happened in Digimon. Just wait a little bit. You'll get your cards at a much more reasonable price. That being said, those have IPs backing them, and that's a big deal. This one, to my knowledge, doesn't. But they have found an alternative to sweeten the pot, so to speak. There is going to be some major cash prizes, including up to $1 million once this starts rolling right off the bat. So this is really, at least to me, this looks like it is trying to get that more competitive game scene, because it's like we won't have the collectors who miss out their favorite characters and want to get cards of them. We got to get the people who want to go hardcore gaming. This makes sense. I actually think that's where the card game Flesh and Blood is really thriving right now. A lot of people I see talking Magic online really talk about how there really isn't nearly that hyper competitive, or at least a large hyper competitive scene of the standard environment anymore. A lot of blame goes to just it becoming more expensive to get, a lot of people migrating more to the casual commander style, and Magic really pushing that, or at least pushing that, and collectors. So it really is less about that high-end standard every Friday night game and more about just having those big pricey cards. I even talked to a person who I played the Digimon card game at, and why they don't stock a lot of Magic the Gathering because of this. Even though when they had the Warhammer decks, they sold out like that. I didn't even know they were carrying them. That's how fast they sold out. They didn't get in their system. But because of all of this, it has felt like there's a bit of a vacuum. And one, Flesh and Blood is definitely where I've heard at least the most Magic players going to. They just had some big tournaments, and they're even doing a new reprint set I know a lot of people are excited about. And my guess is Battle Spirits Saga wants to try to get in that area too. Now, the question is, will it be, I mean, the cash prize is going to be very tempting, but whether the card game itself will grab the same people. I think while Flesh and Blood has a bit more of the art style definitely is more reminiscent of Magic the Gathering, I would say, than something like Yu-Gi-Oh! When Battle Spirit Saga, at least to me, would probably, the art style will be more akin to the Yu-Gi-Oh! So maybe that's trying to get the people outside of, like the regions I mentioned before, who are disillusioned with the way the current card games are, with like maybe how expensive or the current one-turn kill meta might be in some of those games. We'll have to wait and see if it gets a huge following. Like I said, Bandai's already been doing pretty good in the card games. Both Digimon and One Piece sold out really fast or very early on. They didn't expect it to be so popular. The question is, will this continue with this game, or will the other two just sort of, their existence will not give space to the other one? And then, of course, you got to think of the Disney card game. I can't believe I just forgot and remembered it now. As soon as that enters the ring, like how they develop a competitive scene, how they appeal to local game stores, this is all going to be shelf space fighting. Trading card games are definitely in a bit of a renaissance right now. And for the most part, I'm honestly shocked, and in a good way, how well some of these games are holding up and trying to actually be a good card game and not just the usual big three that we always tend to talk about. And finally, I know we just talked about Magic and not having as big a competitive scene, but it's still there. And in fact, they just had a big 30th anniversary. In fact, there's going to be more stuff. This is the same thing where I talked about those very expensive packs, which actually were there apparently in some gift bags hidden. So those also reason price. Sounds like there's a lot of fun going on there. And then there's the secret lair with the 30-day thing, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I want to say is congratulations to Nathan Sturrer. He won the tournament there with a Grixis mid-range. I actually know what that generally means. So congratulations on the win, and hopefully Magic actually steps up to where it was before in terms of the standard scene, where a lot of people are excited to go and try to win, to take on players like Nathan in a World Cup series, rather than just waiting for the next 30th or 50th anniversary of Magic to come around. Now on to Kickstarter Pickstarter. But first, a quick note, I've actually done a ton of videos for a bunch of different projects recently, and most of them are actually ending soon, so I'll bring them up during that part. But I want to make a quick shout out here really just to let you know, because you should just watch my actual video for it. And that would be for Oceans Legends of the Deep. This is an expansion for Oceans, which I think is an amazing game, a much better version of Evolution. Go check out my video, go check out the Kickstarter, especially if you haven't played Ocean. Oceans is really good, and this adds a lot of cool mystical fun elements to it. But to me, it's more of the visiting the myths section in the museum rather than adding magic and fantasy to what is relatively a nature game of Oceans. But for now, why don't we check out what new Kickstarters are popping up that I think look interesting, and maybe so will you. Our first project is Unconscious Mind. This game, you will play it as psychiatrist in the time of Freudian. I don't think anyone of you actually plays as Freud himself, and you are trying to help patients out. Patients will have their own difficulty levels, so to speak, as well as their own griefs that may enhance that difficulty. In order to help them, you're going to have to go through their dreams and find out what is plaguing them and spend different resources. Then, of course, you're going to have to meet up with your colleagues around the world, discuss your issues, and maybe even publish some papers to show off your notoriety. This looks like a big, cool Euro game. I'm pretty sure this is shown off at Essen Spiel, and I'm really curious to see how all the moving parts fit together. That being said, this is big, not just in all the pieces, but also price. It is on the heavier side. It is about around $17, and that won't include, of course, any additional expansion stuff you may want to throw on there. But maybe when you go to sleep tonight, try to look into your dreams and see if there is an underlying need for you to back this project. Next up, we have The Last of Us now coming to board games with Last of Us Escape the Dark. This is based off the acclaimed video game in which you either work alone or together in order to make your way through the post-apocalyptic world of these spore zombies. When I first saw this, I thought it was a little funny because I remember looking at the art and then seeing the name Escape the Dark. I'm like, this sounds really familiar. This reminds me of some other games I played, and it turns out it's because I have. There is Escape the Dark Sector as well as Escape the Dark Castle. I've played both, one sci-fi themed, one more medieval themed. So I can definitely tell you they did a really interesting job there. It's more of a deck of cards going through and almost like it feels a bit more, those feel a bit more roguelike. This looks more like an open world where you explore different locations and have to deal with the issues there. The mechanics of those games I think will definitely fit the environment you'd want of being those lone survivors and just trying your best to not die to whether it be zombies or other humans. Now, this is Last of Us, so it's a much bigger name, which means a bigger price tag. There is a standard edition for about $76, but a collector's edition version for a whopping $115. I'm sure a lot of people think this should have been the first thing I mentioned, but we've got the Slay the Spire, the board game, based off the video game Slay the Spire, which is based off of deck building card games. This is one of those moments of a video game using board game elements, now returning back to the tabletop. You'll be working together, building up your deck, moving along different paths. You've got returning cards and characters from the video game, which I will admit right now, I still need to play. I'm sorry. I will probably want to try this out too. That being said, I have a sneaking suspicion it's a little cheaper to buy the digital version on Steam, or the video game version. I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 digital would be the correct, versus this Kickstarter, which the game is going at the pledge level for $100. So maybe try out the video game first, and if you really like it, look at this Kickstarter, because then it might be a perfect way to bring that right back to the physical realm. Finally, we have a new expansion for Role Player Adventures. It's Secret Keeper. This is a campaign game in the Role Player universe, one that which I feel every game is out of the park fantastic. I actually just got Role Player Adventures, the base, to go around with. I did play the first campaign in a preview thing, so maybe I'll play through the actually first scenarios in order to actually get excited to try this new expansion out. You can watch any of our old videos, but honestly, anything with the role player name, I highly recommend. Odds are, if you already have Role Player, you know about this, but if you're just looking for the expansion, it's $55, but I highly recommend you look at the rest, or at the very least, just get Role Player. That is the dice game where you just build up a character, and that character you make, if you enjoy that game, can actually be translated into the adventure, so you sort of are already buying one game to feed into another game. It all works out perfectly. They have a very good game loop there. Finally, let's mention some projects that are ending, with most of them I've already done a video for. So let's first mention the one I didn't do anything for. That's the new Chorus Quest. I mentioned this a little bit before. Definitely go look at this game. If you have kids, it's going to be perfect for them. It's designed with children in mind while still actually being a fun game. So take a look at that one. We've also got Oathsworn, the second edition. I just released a video for. Honestly, one of the best campaign games I ever played. I was extremely positive in the video. You can watch my official review. I got the first edition. There are going to be some tweaks in the second one. You can take a look through the Kickstarter to learn more. It's really fun. And there is a standee version, by the way, so you can get it a little bit cheaper. We've also got the Destiny's expansion, Witchwood, which is ending soon. That involves a new storyline involving magic in a dark forest and the deals humanity made a long ago with the spirits of the forest. So that was pretty cool. And finally, there's Monsters and the Things That Destroyed Them. I put up a playthrough for that one. This is a small, quick game by Joey Vigor, someone who also made Chaosmos, a game I highly recommend because I've yet to play any other game similar to it. A really interesting sort of hide a special artifact. But this game is quick, light, fun too. A lot of fun monster movie references. A perfect gift for someone who enjoys maybe horror monster movies. But that is all the news I have for you. Let me know what your thoughts on anything are. Did I forget to mention another new TCG that's coming out? Are you a fan of the old Battle Spirits and are excited for Saga? Let me know. And of course, maybe something else. Do you think there's a Kickstarter I forgot? Did you back any things? And let me know if you watched my videos, if there's something I forgot. I'd love to hear from you. But thank you so much for watching to this point. It really means a lot. Of course, doing the usual things, the like, share, subscribe is very helpful. And thank you to all my rollers who support me on Patreon. It means so much. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been the Roll for Crit News.